Hannah.
Good job,
Everybody
Hannah.
always forgets to do. Good
We
job.
forgot
I'm gonna go remind the other group just in case.
We've forgotten Chris's last time, I think.
Yes, I think most people actually. I think there's only one that did it last time. So
it was Anne.
I'm gonna leave you guys for a little bit, but I'll be back.
Okay.
All right. Let's make sure everybody knows everyone. How about a quick round of introductions? I can start. Hi, Hannah. I'm with ODOT. I work on the toll program. Sam, do you want to go? Do you want to go next and pick someone else after you?
Sure, it's Sam Roberts, project team, mostly working on the NEPA side, but I'll be helping out today on the Jam board, just taking notes. Michael.
Hi, everyone. Michael Espinoza. I'm with the City of Portland. I work in the Portland Bureau of Transportation, and I work on a variety of projects, but also the pricing options for equitable mobility task force project that PBOT and the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability are working on currently. I'll pass it to Eduardo.
Yes, hello, Eduardo Ramos here. I am a community representative at large. I am a local government employee, and I will pass it to Dwight.
Thank you, Eduardo. Dwight Brashear. I am the transit director for the South Metro Area Regional Transit, which you can see there, the banner there. We are a public transit agency owned and operated by the city of Wilsonville. I will turn it over to James.
Hi, everyone. James Paulson. I am the board chair for Work Systems, Inc. and a small business owner here in Portland. You have to look at my ear a lot because my nice big screen is that way. And my internet connection is not strong, so I use chat a lot.
Okay, we'll keep an eye on the chat.
Thank you.
You bet. Jermaine?
Hello, everyone. I'm Jermaine Flintroy with Beyond Black and Play, Grow, Learn, a youth organization out in East County. Glad to be part of the conversation. I can't see the people that's all on the call because I'm on my phone, but where would you like to pass it to? Please pass it.
Okay.
I think I'm last. I'm Heather Wills. I'm the project manager for the consultant team for the toll projects.
Awesome. Well, we are going to be together for the next 40 minutes, and we're here today to really dive into identifying policies and strategies for options for health and safety. And before we jump into the discussion questions, we will be reporting out. Can I get an EMAC volunteer for someone who wants to do the short report outs, please? Thanks, Michael. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen so that we can see the Jamboard, and then we'll get started with the first question. Let's dig into research. Okay. So I'm starting my little timer. Okay, so before we kind of dig into feedback, are there any questions on this research document? No? Okay, let me check the chat. All right, well, how about some initial kind of reactions to some of the key takeaways or some of the examples? Go for it, Michael.
Well, I first want to say, thank you for all this research. It is so, comprehensive, and I really enjoyed reading through that. And I'm just looking at some of my notes, and in the high level, takeaways, the number 5, I think we can look at the impacts of diversion and look at congestion reduction on the highways. But I'm also really interested in, understanding like how is it impacting VMT overall? Really with the hope that there's overall reduction in VMT and specifically single occupant vehicles, that there's a reduction in that. And so just looking at it beyond just how, congested the highways are, but into like just a broader across the transportation system overall.
Thanks, Michael. All right, we got that on there. Did anyone else have any kind of initial reactions to it? Anything they kind of wanted to see that maybe wasn't there, or something they want to go in deeper? Dwight?
Yeah, no, I was looking at number 5, which I found interesting. It talked about diversion and how we need to look at the impacts of, there's a current impact, on the interstate, and then of course diversion would possibly create some serious impacts on some of the surface streets, surrounding the interstate. And I think it's really important to focus in on that, because we don't want to get into an exercise of just moving the deck chairs around the Titanic, and that, in my opinion, is what we do if we don't really focus on the impacts there. That was it.
Yeah, I think we're with you there. We want to make sure that we're creating something that works with the system. Anybody else? Was there anything that you liked or something you didn't like? James or Jermaine, did you have any reactions to this?
I'll chime in that James put in the chat, that he agrees that moving the problem is not a solution. And I also agree with that too. I think if we like push down in one section and there's, more VMT in another, it's just, moving it around. So it's important to know like how the whole system overall. And I think that kind of goes back to all the VMT stuff I was thinking about too, so.
I'm going to give a double thank you to James and Michael for your help. Okay, well, we have about 1 more minute. Any last burning thoughts on the research document that we want to put up on the Jamboard before we move over to policies and strategies? Okay, all right, I'm going to move us to policies and strategies. So if you want to open up the neighborhood health and safety policy and strategy options document, that's what we're going to be getting your feedback on. And okay, all right, we're in the right spot now. So before we kind of dig into getting your feedback, were there any questions on this document?
I guess I have a question, and it maybe verges on the territory of a suggestion, but in the comments about taking a balanced approach to, what defines the travel corridor, I think that question around like the definition of like what travel corridor is still at play. And so I mentioned it a while ago, but the definition of a corridor that like Metro uses in their travel corridors, I think would be one that is, you know, pretty inclusive. That ties back to the things we were talking about here in the EMAC space about like, you know, wanting to see investments made not just in the like right of way on the highway road, but you know, in areas that are impacted and around, just recognizing that it's a holistic system altogether. So that is like my question / comment.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, let's get that on the Jamboard. I think the way it works, Michael, is the more you say it, it just gets bigger and bigger on the Jamboard note. So that's awesome. Thank you. Okay. So the question, you know, for this is based on your understanding of your community and the research, are these the policies and strategies that should be advanced by you, EMAC, for further consideration? You know, looking at what's in this document already, how can it be strengthened? Is there anything that's missing? Oh, I see a lot in the chat. Okay, let me catch up. Okay. I'm sorry, James. Let's see. Is there a way? James, do you have the policy? Oh, there you go. It's in the chat. Thank you. Okay, so some of the comments, just for anyone who can't see in the chat, is that we have, we need policy language which addresses the public concern that side streets will be overwhelmed. Did anyone else have some thoughts around the policy and strategy options that were there to advance equity for neighborhood health and safety?
I'm happy to share some thoughts. I recognize I just talked, so, you know, if others want to, you know, talk, by all means. I don't want to, you know, budge ahead in anybody. But I think when we're thinking about addressing impact, you know, toll revenue and toll program design should be designed to reduce the climate impacts of the transportation system and to reduce the, you know, huge health impacts of our worsening climate as well. And someone earlier in the meeting, you know, mentioned severe weather that comes our way, increased droughts. That, you know, there's a lot of climate change impacts that we're experiencing and likely to get worse. And you know, our equity populations, you know, could suffer, you know, the most or bear a larger burden if, you know, if they don't have resources to adapt to it. And I think collectively we have a responsibility, you know, to really mitigate our emissions. So just, you know, really thinking through how is this program going to be impacting our climate impacts is really important.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks for making that connection, because that's definitely something that we see as an area of importance for the toll projects. Anybody else have some thoughts on the policies or strategies?
While folks are thinking, I have 2 more things to offer.
Let's hear them. We've got about a minute left, so let's hear them.
Okay, so you know, I think too, we've talked about, like, we need to see, safety improvements in the system and the broad toll corridor. So I just wanted to echo support for that. But then also specifically, toll revenues being dedicated to active transportation facilities can help provide healthier options for people as well. And so I know that was kind of nested under that like neighborhood category, neighborhood livability, but I think it deserves like stronger attention, that by providing safe places to walk and bike, and to walk or bike to transit too, is a really important component of building healthy cardio activities into our daily lives. And I think when we're able to do that as part of our daily routines, that it makes it easier for us to live healthy. And that's only possible if there's the right safe places, safe infrastructure to do that.
I agree with you, Michael. I'm always thinking that I have such a easier time exercising when it's something fun or something that I like need to do, and then you kind of double dip, and it's good for you also, to kind of build it into your lifestyle. So I appreciate that perspective. All right. Was there anyone else? Dwight, did you have anything you wanted to get on this slide here?
Well, I can tell you that in some of the, I lose track of the number of committees that I'm on, but what I'm hearing out there in elected official land especially is when it comes to diversion, having some type of policy or direction as far as how far off the interstate would we consider funding improvements that may be related to diversion, if you understand what I'm saying. So some people may say, any frontage road that parallels the interstate or, a quarter mile off the interstate. But I'm hearing some of the electeds talk about the 5 mile, from the interstate that could be impacted by diversion. So some policy or some discussion around, who decides, how we decide what the radius for the diversion funding, I think is going to be important especially to the elected officials. If that helps, if that gives you some idea.
Anyone else?
I wanted to ask a question to James, if maybe you could expand on one of your comments that you put in the chat. You said the project needs to show it's a net positive for the entire community. And I think there's a broad range of like what would be positive. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
All right. What I'm thinking on that, it's because when I read through some of the, just really quickly, some of the survey responses and the public comments, and like right now, I don't feel that the people in the area see this as a positive. I think that they see this as being challenging, and that this is going to make their life and lifestyle more challenging. And so I think that we are doing a really good job in trying to overcome some of the historic challenges of leaving people out of the conversation. But I don't want to get so far ahead of us that we're not looking at the entire project, and we need to make sure that the entire project is a net benefit for people, not just hey, we did a really good job on looking at disenfranchised communities, but the project itself is not accepted by the overall community. That's what I was trying to get at there.
Yeah, that's a great point, James. Thank you. Thanks for putting in the chat. And Michael, thanks again for helping me monitor the chat. Let's see, another question that's in there is, what is an acceptable amount of diversion? How much diversion is being modeled? That's a good question. I feel like there's a connection between that and the social resource maps that we're gonna look like, and I'm gonna kind of look to Heather to see if I'm going in the right direction. But you know, the resource maps were kind of identifying like where we think people will be going, and so we kind of like use that information in the analysis to kind of help look at the impacts of diversion. And what it means to the community.
Yeah, I would just add that there's, you know, we're starting the analysis, and so we are planning to share those types of results with the committee. But yeah, I mean, that's definitely an analysis that we're doing, and how that impacts that surrounding community, and what are people trying to access? How does it impact that access? A good example I used before is like, if there's an intersection, this is from a technical perspective, you know, if an intersection is, you know, failing right now and we're adding more traffic that makes it fail more, then what are we going to do about it? And likewise, if there's like a sidewalk where kids are going to school, what do we do about that? So those are the types of impacts we would be looking at related to the diversion. Aside from just like how many cars are on the road, like what is that causing that increase number of cars?
Thank you. I look forward to seeing that for sure. And to James, your point too about like, you know, asking about like, you know, what amount of diversion is acceptable. That also, you know, makes me think too about, you know, what we've heard, that there's like some, you know, diversion happening already too. And so that brings me back to my soapbox on all the vehicle miles traveled, and, you know, how we are looking at it across the whole system, and understanding, are we increasing, you know, the amount of miles that cars are traveling, or is it, you know, is this going to be used as a tool to help manage demand?
Lots of good comments. I'm still thinking about the, you know, the benefits need to be for everyone, not just one group that we're focusing on. Okay, we're gonna move to the next slide, but before we do, just wanted to check in if anyone else had any last closing thoughts on this, Eduardo or Jermaine, or if we're ready to move to the next one. Seeing some head nods. Okay. All right. Let's talk social resource maps. So we looked at the maps, and James, let me try to get this link so I can put it in the chat. But while I'm doing that, so this has to do with the social resource maps, and Garrett and Abe and Bill gave kind of like a recap of what the scuba team kind of called out as missing on the maps, and where we might want to dig in a little bit more. So my question to you is, what are your thoughts on those comments? Is there anything else that you think is missing? And, you know, once we identify what needs to be on the map, how do we kind of take it a step further so it's more than just things on a map? How do we kind of like deepen our understanding of the community and the impacts that tolling could have on them? And feel free to just jump in with any thoughts. I'm going to look for this document to put it in the chat. Did anyone have any thoughts on the categories that we may want to add to the map? Did you feel like it was that we're covering everything we should be thinking about for kind of advancing neighborhood health and safety?
The only type of facilities that I think of that weren't specifically called out, but would fall under like healthcare would just be pharmacies. But you know, those usually tend to be where grocery stores are. But I'm thinking like Walgreens wouldn't be a grocery store, Rite Aid wouldn't be a grocery store per se. So just making sure those are also included.
Yeah, and so that's why I feel like I need to.
Thanks, Eduardo. Yeah, kind of going a little bit deeper to make sure that we're kind of hitting different levels of these like broad topics and not just taking like a limited perspective. So we can kind of dig in.
I appreciate that point. And one thing that came to my mind as well is thinking about, you know, what are there, you know, safe and attractive active transportation networks to these locations, and thinking about like, is there a bike network or a pedestrian network that you know makes these really accessible, and taking a look at that, not only looking at it from like a car driving perspective. I think that would be really beneficial. And please let me know if that was commented, you know, in the document, because but that was like something that struck out to me as like a good connection to make, and was a little bit related to our conversations in the previous months about transit and multimodal connectivity.
Michael, would you have any recommendations for how to kind of maybe drill down in that a little bit so that we're, you know, looking at equity framework communities?
Yeah, well, I guess kind of thinking off the top of my head, you know, if, you know, there was an exercise around, you know, mapping, you know, from an equity area to these, you know, social resource locations, you know, you could, you know, take a look at like, you know, how many minutes does it take you to walk there or bike there, and, you know, do an analysis in that way, to see, you know, if access is changing, or what kind of investments could be made to bring up those scores so that there is, you know, let's say a really excellent, you know, bike route that could drastically cut travel times for access to those social resources. So that's, yeah, that's what comes to mind right away. And
No, go ahead.
And I was just gonna, you know, comment that, you know, Heather brought up the point too, that, you know, if there's increased, let's say, you know, vehicles on a certain corridor or road, you know, and understanding, well, what does that mean for that environment that it's in? So I think it's important too that we just remember about the quality of those other options and how comfortable they feel. And, you know, just understanding that just because there's a bike lane in the road doesn't make it an attractive option for everyone, especially if we're looking, you know, to serve people who, you know, maybe new to biking, you know, or younger children, older folks, like really making it a true inclusive option for people.
So not just thinking about access, but thinking about comfort and safety, which I feel like I kind of heard in some of the policy and strategy options we talked for transit and multimodal. So I really like, I mean, this is probably the whole point of the exercise, but I like all these intersections, you know, how we're like, all these things are connecting. I'm gonna look forward to seeing the final thing when you guys are done with it. Okay, I'm looking at the chat. Third time's a charm, and there's a message in here from James. Let's see. Okay. Will tolling reduce the number of small businesses in the area? Will it make the area less attractive for new small business development? This project will require everyone to make changes, so we need to make sure that these changes are not good for a few and very challenging for most people. Thanks, James. Yeah, do we have small businesses on the map? We do not have small businesses on the map.
Yeah, I'm a huge supporter of this exercise of asking people what they consider to be community resources, because we have a standard sort of definition of things like schools and hospitals and things like that. So like understanding what is important to the community and things that need to be accessed. And so, yeah, like small businesses, I wouldn't have thought of that, but now that it's said, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes that makes a lot of sense. So there's also like the community resources, and then like that would also maybe spill over into an analysis of potential economic impacts as well. Like how are people affected that have those businesses and the ability to access them? So, but there's a lot of crossover sometimes between the categories that we like to put things in.
What about land values? James put that in the chat. Is there a category that could kind of help us dig into that?
Yeah, I mean, let's definitely like document it and let me think more about it. I mean, a lot of times that ends up being in sort of the economic analysis. But I'm not sure exactly what we do to project into the future, or what we can do to project into the future, the impact on land values. But it's certainly something that could be like a qualitative assessment of something that could potentially happen. So yeah, all really good stuff.
I was going to say that has me thinking about too, you know, studies that have showed if you're walking or biking and have good foot traffic, you know, you are, you know, that kind of opens up the possibility for people to see smaller businesses, you know, that have a storefront, like, you know, maybe on a main street, or potentially, you know, a different side street or a route that has more bike and walk traffic now. And I think you can just kind of think about the parallels to when the interstate system was built, you know, those land areas around the exit and entrance ramps, you know, sprung up all these different kinds of businesses. And so now if we're looking to kind of, you know, change that paradigm, and there's other routes that then take on more importance in our communities, you know, what are the economic impacts, you know, and possibilities from those changes as well.
James has added a comment in here that agrees with Michael that the diversion could result in more business for local shops.
Thanks for that point. And I think, you know, if you drive down an interstate, frankly, you mostly see large mega chains and corporations, you know, from just the, you know, the national scale. But, you know, when you're oftentimes walking and biking to a destination, right, you may like pick up on smaller businesses and see that they're there and spend money and, you know, support that local business infrastructure, which I think, you know, there's a lot of studies that show, right, those local businesses, you know, keep money in the community and, you know, provide jobs that support the community as well. And those do it a bit better than national chains where the profits go to some other like distant area. So thanks for bringing that up.
Anyone else, some thoughts on things we really want to consider and make sure that we're analyzing when we think about neighborhood health and safety and where people need to go and how they could be impacted by tolls?
You know, this is Dwight. As I look at I think it's bullet point for the affordable housing locations, being in transit, and I suspect that one of the things that will come out of as we work towards equity would be a robust, you know, transit along that same corridor that would be offered, you know, to certain individuals. Well, be open to everybody, but probably would benefit, you know, certain individuals. As it relates to affordable housing, one of the things that I'm working on here in Wilsonville is not only affordable housing, but affordable housing through transit-oriented development. And what that means is, you know, for those that don't understand, is to build affordable housing near and around transit hubs or transit lines that would give the folks that live in that particular location quick and easy access to affordable, in our case, free, but in most cases, affordable transit options. And so not only do we need to look at affordable housing, but we need to look at how it ties in with transit. And I think that certainly could be an effective tool going forward as we look at transit as an option to making tolling equitable.
Thanks, Dwight. Thanks for helping us make those connections.
Yeah.
So oh, go ahead.
I'm not sure if people can read the chat, so I wanted to make sure that James' message got through. And he says, Dwight, that makes sense. Given people living in affordable housing have income limits, so they will be more dependent on public transit.
Yeah, that's the point exactly. Yeah, that's it.
Eduardo, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I was thinking back on the performance measures and how like the health promoting activities are called out on their own. And then there's another performance measure that's kind of a catch-all that talks about jobs and community spaces and like groceries. Just thought that might be worth re-examining like how much we want to put in that catch-all performance. And specifically, I'm interested in calling out access to jobs on its own. Because I think the bottom line question for everyday people is the impact to their financial stability, right? And I think the public comments reflect that meeting after meeting. And so really taking those comments into consideration by calling out the jobs, if anything. But I would probably look at that performance measure and say like it's too it's too much of a catch-all. We should probably split it up.
Thanks so much, Eduardo, for that. Okay, we are nearing the conclusion. Anyone have something they want to make sure gets on the Jamboard that we capture before kind of next steps for this is the project team is going to take this and digest it and add it into the policy and strategies draft options document that we were looking at, and then probably work with the NEPA SCUBA team and then bring it back to you for the July meeting to see if we're getting closer for advancing these. Okay, well, we can, let's see, in the last couple, we're gonna get kicked out of here shortly, so I just wanna make sure, Michael, are you able to see the Jamboard? Okay, so I'll go back to the first one. Just so nobody's alarmed, we're going to be moved out of this room in a minute.